museum.
Well, what if this didn't happen? What if instead he survived? Hello everyone and welcome back to the archive, where today I will be telling you about something new. Again, a what if this time. A what if I wanted to do for a very long time. What if Bular survived? If you haven't been keeping up with the channel, you will know that I have talked and hinted at this possibility for a while. All the way back since my Bular episode almost 2 years ago now. There, I said that if that video got 10 likes, I tackled the question of what if Bular survived, and that goal has been smashed. So to fulfill both mine and your wishes, let's see what our Dark Prince has in store. Before we get into anything, remember to like, comment and subscribe. We have slowed down a bit on my end, but by June we should have everything back to the way it was. And also, I am feeling much better, as you can hear, as in my last few episodes I continuously had a bit of a cough. But I feel much better now, and now you will not hear the raspy voice of a cockroach in these videos. And with that out of the way, let's get into it. In order to explore this what if, we need to look at Bular as a character and the situation of his death. In his final fight with Jim, he is impaled on daylight as it is summoned inside him. This either imbued him or unlocked his latent power to revitalize himself and try and get some sweet, sweet revenge, only to die seconds later. This, if I'm being honest, is perfectly in line with his character, as he is very brash and believes there is only one way to get through a problem. It's quite fitting, as he is very similar to a bull. Now that we have a reason and an easy way of bringing him back, let's start our change. Bular is impaled on daylight, its energy surging through him, and with the aid of the sun, kills him. Bular closes his eyes for what he thinks is the last time. Then a flash enters his body, and suddenly he's alive. But not the same. Weaker and something he can't yet explain. He looks up in anger to see his enemies. It would be an easy kill, he thinks. He quickly swims to the shore, ready to pounce, until he thinks, what if he dies again? What if this is his last chance? His mind fights itself on what is best to do, until he decides to run away, not wanting to waste his life once again. This was an easy change and adds a bit more of his own thinking, as it's just strange how he got from the bottom of the bay to then all the way up where Jim and Co were. Bular runs back to the museum in hopes of rallying his forces and attacking Jim now while he is weak. Then again, so is he. Though he is alive, he feels far weaker, far slower than he was before. If he was to fight Jim or even his pudgy friend, he could be killed. Instead, Bular changes his plan of action Arriving at the museum, he finds many goblins still alive. But as for the impures though, they're nowhere to be seen. A nuisance, he thinks. He silences himself, however. His ego. They will be far more useful now that he is weak. Bular gets as many goblins as he can away, and to his own shame, leaves the killer head pieces behind. "I will be back, father," he says aloud. If you can tell, this what if is trying to change Bular as a character in some way. That way being his anti-Bull persona. After his death, it has awakened his fear, being now more cautious and preemptive when it comes to his decisions, which is actually the opposite of what people who die and come back do, which actually explains why Bular's suicide attacked Jim, but that's not entertaining now, is it? After leading the goblins away, Bular sticks to the shadows, biding his time and building up his forces in the sewers of Arcadia. In this time, he has a lot to think about. How his actions affected him. How his goals and attitude led him to his death. And they almost did that again. Not this time. Something needed to change. He needed to be smarter. This leaves him out of the conflicts for a while, but not the fight, as he does subtle things in the background in order to inconvenience Jim, with small bands of goblins being sent out to cause mischief and terrorism throughout Arcadia. Through this meddling, he learns of Strickler's survival, and how he is using an assassin to do his bidding. Who that assassin is, he can only guess at this time. Bular also discovers certain abilities in his new reborn state. One of those being his lack of a need to eat, sleep, or drink. Being semi-undead and kept alive by magic, he doesn't need food to sustain himself. With this positive comes a negative though, as he must substitute food and drink for magic. If he cannot find a sufficient dose of magic, he will crumble to dust. So he sends goblins to infiltrate Troll Market and steal whatever magical artifacts they can in order to stockpile a supply whenever he should have need of it. Bular also spends more time readying his forces and realizes goblins by themselves in sufficient numbers are useful. But if he wants to get his revenge and free his father, he is going to need more. Setting out, he tells his followers to continue his plans and elects one of the many goblin chiefs to supervise his work in his stead. He makes his way to a dig site, the same one he had previously gone to summon a Storkling. A Storkling. That would be of great use in his army, he thought. He uses what magical equipment he could spare to bring not just one Storkling, but many. He has the numbers. He just needs the proper beasts of war. While Bular was out, however, the goblins would show their incompetence. Without his discipline and fear, the goblins had slipped up, causing more chaos and damage than they should have. which was spotted by Claire. On the same night, Not Enrique had his party. Claire, trying to cover it up, noticed a gaggle of goblins running in the streets. This was strange, as goblins hadn't been seen since the battle at the museum. At least, that's what Jim and Toby said. Once she had dealt with the party, she would send a message to Jim and Toby, but they wouldn't pick up. So she went out alone with Not Enrique to check out what the goblins were doing. Tracking them down to a sewer drain, this would lead to Claire growing suspicious of the goblins. Later telling Jim and team about this event, they would all go down to the sewers and see what exactly they were doing. And after walking for a long time, they would find their camp. Observing groups of goblins being sent out, weapons stockpiles and magical items that Blinky recognized as belonging in Troll Market. The group was confused. Why were goblins stealing magical artifacts? And how were they operating in such an orderly fashion? Jim's mind flickered to Strickler. Perhaps he was using the goblins to cause chaos or set up a new plan. Then, taking a closer look on the walls and ground, they see claw marks. Familiar claw marks. And footprints on the floor. A troll is leading them, he thought. Then he hears a familiar voice behind him.
Hello there, Fleshbag.
And that's where I'm going to leave it today. Stay tuned to see what the Gum Gum Prince of Undeath does in the wake of his enemies.